Up next is a new segment to share with you today. It's one we call Crop Talk. This segment will be focused on bringing row crop producers the most up-to-date research and data available. We plan to visit with extension and industry experts to share information with you that will ultimately help improve your yield and profitability. In our inaugural Crop Talk segment, we welcome Nebraska Extension plant pathologist Tamra Jackson-Ziems to discuss how seed selection could help you avoid some pesky pathogens in your cornfields. On today's Crop Talk, we are talking with Nebraska Extension plant pathologist Tamra Jackson-Ziems. Tamra, thanks for coming in.
Well, thanks for having me.
Today we're going to talk about seed selection, particularly as it relates to tar spot. So give us an update on where tar spot is in the state of Nebraska.
Well, just so everyone knows, tar spot did move into Nebraska, probably out of Iowa and from the east in general. And so we've confirmed it now in 31 counties in extreme eastern Nebraska, and also a little bit of movement into northern Kansas and in South Dakota as well. And so it could be further spread than that, but it's at very, very low incidence and severity in most of those locations. But we'll continue to monitor that and update the map.
What kind of field does tar spot like to locate within?
You know, as we've watched this pathogen move across the Midwest, it's about moving that fungus across, and the fungus likes wet conditions like most of them do. It's very favored by cooler conditions like temperatures in the 60s and 70s, and so that's why we'll see it flare up at the end of the season, usually when our cool night temperatures are more supportive. But where we really saw it become the most severe this year were in those pivot irrigated fields. And it's just now getting into the part of the state where we have more irrigation, so we expect to see more of that. And I want to make sure everyone's aware of it.
Obviously there's a visible sign to it, but have you been able to track yield loss associated with tar spot?
You know, in Nebraska, not really yet. And I would bet the vast majority of fields did not see any yield loss. There were some in Saunders County and a few others, where it was severe enough that we might have seen some yield loss. In states east of us, where it's been there longer and it's built up to more severe levels, they've documented in the worst case scenario up to 50% yield loss. And so we know the potential is there for it to be severe and cause a big impact. Fortunately, most of the time that's not going to be the case, but it really is going to rely on the conditions.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to have you in today, Tamra, to talk about seed selection, because there is some work that producers can do here as they're looking at next year and making some considerations. What can they be thinking about and looking at?
Well, this is a good time of year to start thinking about managing all of our diseases, and this is one you might not have thought about yet because it is pretty new to us. And so there is the chance that you can select hybrids that would be more resistant or more tolerant of the disease tar spot. And anything you can do to reduce the amount of disease is going to reduce impact on yield or potentially even the need for a fungicide later on. And so if you can work with your seed company agronomist and talk to them about concerns you may have about tar spot, especially if it was in your field or county near you in the past year or two. I think it would be worth your time to do that, particularly if it's in irrigated fields. And so seed catalogs may not always have ratings for this disease. It's new enough and it's really hard to work with. And so they have to screen in locations where they've got the disease. We can't just inoculate and get it. So just something to keep in mind and have those conversations to be prepared.
Are there particular resources that are out there for a producer to utilize? And of course, we always like to promote talking to your local Nebraska Extension office helps on that front too, right?
Absolutely. Reach out if you think you have tar spot, if you start seeing those black dots on those leaves. And so that's important for us to make sure we know where the disease is. We do have resources on the Crop Protection Network and on Crop Watch to help people recognize the disease. And we do have fungicide efficacy data. The good news is fungicides do work, but it really matters which products you're using and when they go on relative to when disease develops. We know the products that have mixed modes of action, like the three-way products, have done the best job in our multi-state evaluations of that. Otherwise, though, I'd rely back on the seed company to look at their data for each of the hybrids.